This week on Culture Leaders, I sat down with Greg Schaefer. He's an entrepreneur, he's an endurance athlete, and one of the most resilient human beings I've ever met. Greg is the founder of Schaefer Enterprises, which is a boutique insurance agency that's competed with some of the bigger names in the business. But it is not his resume that sets him apart, it is the way that he leads. Greg was diagnosed with Parkinson's at 46 years old, and instead of hiding it, he kept moving. He kept racing, kept leading, not with bravado, but with vulnerability, grit, and purpose. In our conversation, he opens up about how that diagnosis changed his approach to work, to family, and to life, and how he's using it to mentor others through their own diagnosis journeys. We talked about his leadership evolution, the culture he's built at his company, and the moments that pushed him into what he calls the pain cave and why he always chooses to go through it. This is not just a story about a leader with Parkinson's. It's a story about strength, surrender, and what it really means to live with purpose. Please welcome to the podcast, Greg Schaefer. All right, Greg. So excited to have you here. Tell us, what is your why?
Family is my greatest why. They see me fight, persevere, love fiercely, and an inheritance from my boys more powerful than any business or athletic achievement. I want them to grow up knowing I never gave up and hopefully carry the same grit forward in their lives. I do not want Parkinson's in the end to be my story. It's the fuel to live more boldly and help others find their strength and their why.
How old are your boys?
12 and 14.
Oh, wow. Okay. So they were 9 and, oh my goodness, I don't do math in the morning. 9 and 11 when you were diagnosed?
Correct.
Okay. Tell us that story.
Well, the story, we'll take a step back. The story comes kind of full circle with Joe Terry. And it kind of connects the why. After he introduced me to you, I kind of binge listened to almost every one of your episodes. And I called Joe and I said, Joe, why? Why me? I'm flattered. I said, I have inferiority complex with these guests. And I'm going to read a little sentence he wrote to me, and it touches me to this moment. And he said, because you showed up to a race, shocked all of us with the news of your Parkinson's diagnosis. You didn't hide it. You surrendered to the circumstances while choosing to maximize life, gratitude, and the opportunities ahead. And, that day that I saw him and he's speaking about was probably the worst race of my life, but the best finish line I've ever had. So the day I was diagnosed it's a little complicated because I was diagnosed and my wife is a physician and she didn't believe that I was really diagnosed with Parkinson's. I had some terrible races. I had some issues. And she just kept saying, you're getting old. You need some rest. So I went to New York to see a second opinion. Again, wife didn't believe it. She said, you gave him the paperwork that you were diagnosed with Parkinson's. You should have been giving him a blind test. And so we went to a third. And we were at University of Miami and we got in the car. It still gets me emotional. The doctor just said, I'm so sorry to tell you, but you have Parkinson's and it's not fair to you because you're in such great shape. So we sat in the car and it was probably one of the few times I've ever seen my wife cry. And we came home and told them and, they acted like it was no big deal. They're like, Dad, you're going to be fine. Don't worry about it. So I didn't know if, thinking back, if they were really scared, if they thought I was going to die or, what was going on, because I didn't really know. And I can just see my wife was a little scared. So that kind of spurred all of the motivation that I have today. Um, and it really kind of have, it's given me that dog mentality to fight because they're both very serious athletes, and I am, always hard on them and pushing them through things.
When you talk to them about that moment now, do they tell you what they were thinking?
Yeah, I think, well, they don't tell me. They tell my wife, and I think my wife is much better at explaining different circumstances because I have some good days and I have some bad days, mostly good days. Um, the one conversation that's very funny that comes to mind is I've signed up. I'm kind of going in reverse order, but I've signed up for a bunch of races this year, and I've raced 6 times this year in the Boston Marathon and 5 Ironman events. And my son recently said, "Dad, when's your next race?" And I told him November 8th in Spain. And he said, "Is it a full?" And I said, "No." And he said, "I think it's time you step it up and start doing fulls again. I think you're ready." And I'm like, wow, I'm like thinking to myself, he just called me out and he's calling me a wuss. And I need to really step it up.
Sounds
So
like they're hard on you too.
yeah, so let me tell you, 2026, I've already signed up for a full. So I'm ready for the challenge.
When was the last time you did a full?
So the last time I did a full was with our friend Joe Terry, and it's a full circle moment because that is when I knew something was wrong. And I spent the last 10 miles of the marathon running next to Joe. And we kind of were going back and forth, back and forth. And that 10 miles was taking a really long time. I finished every race at about 11 hours, and it was about probably 12 and a half hours in, and we weren't that close to the finish line. We got to the finish line chute, and it was pitch dark. And we got into, typical Joe. He's like, "You go first." And it's everyone's moment. And I'm like, "No, you go first." And, we kept going back and forth. And finally I was like, "Listen, if I had your hair, I would definitely go first. So go first. You have beautiful blonde hair. Everyone wants to see you." And he went through and was standing there waiting for me and gave me a huge hug at the end and said, "You're a gentleman." And that was awesome. And we've been friends. We've and done many races ever since then.
So you met him on the course
I met him on the course, and
that
we have
day.
that day, and we have an underground society of I call it an underground society of Ironman athletes who have done many races. It's a group called Ironman XC, and it's many top executives, um, physicians, and it's a white glove service for really spoiled people who don't want to do a lot of the things on their own. And it is the best family I have. And when I was diagnosed, those were the first people I had contacted. And to date, today is actually a special day for me because I've really never come out to the public and announced that I have Parkinson's. So this is going to be the first time a lot of people find out that I do have Parkinson's, and I've been running my business with it. And family, Ironman XC group, they're really the only people that I've talked to about it.
If I'm not mistaken, there was some reservations about sharing this news, right? Didn't you and your wife discuss keeping it a secret for a while?
Yeah, my wife is a very private person. She's a dermatologist in the community. She, most of her patient base is family and schoolmates of our children, and didn't want the sympathy of people saying, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. And is there anything we can do?" We wanted to just, you know, go about our business. And, when you look at me at first glance, you probably wouldn't even notice anything is wrong. Most of my symptoms are muscle tightness, muscle stiffness. When you think of Parkinson's and you think of Michael J. Fox, there's visible signs of hand tremors and difficulty walking. Those are not my symptoms. And there's about 27 different symptoms that people suffer from. And mine is really just muscle tightness and rigidity, they call it.
Was she worried about how you would be perceived as a leader?
So I think I went through an acquisition at my company, and I think she was worried about how I would be perceived by private equity and the investors and my staff. Um, and she was more worried about the pity party. She's not looking for any sympathy, and just wanted to keep it private.
Yeah. So I wonder how it has shaped your understanding of your leadership philosophy or your beliefs around how leaders present themselves. What lessons have you in your own leadership journey acquired in the last few years?
So I used to be so consumed with the win, the sale. I grew up a salesperson and I led, I'm a strong type of leader and I would give myself the credit as a visionary. Um, but I lead today now with more calmness, more clarity, caring more about what people feel and think. And if somebody was going through something 10 years ago, I would say it's not my problem. It's probably their problem, and I have to go close that next deal. Today, my team and I, we really have a close knit group, and we care so much about each other. We cover for each other. We don't point fingers, and we win and lose together. So, so for me, that's the biggest difference in leadership that I had 10 years ago.
So there's a paradox in something that you just said, which interests me. You said caring more about what people think. And a lot of these motivational speakers out there will talk about not caring what people think and being true to yourself. And so, how do you balance caring what people think and caring about what people think about you, I suppose?
Well, I've learned I care much less about what people think of me. um, I've this whole process has put me in the back seat, and I really try and use it to find purpose to help other people. And that's one of the reasons why today I wanted to come out and talk about what happened to me, um, and really use this as a purpose to be there for other people. Um, and obviously, business goes on, and I have a responsibility as a salesman, and I have a P&L, and the word EBITDA comes up every other day with work.
Conversation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So let's not pretend that that's not important. But my real purpose is being there for my team, and then helping other people understand that life has turns and bumps and different terrain. But we can get through anything now. Like I feel like I can get through anything now than I would have in the past.
Do you get the thing that I get, which is every once in a while when work is stressful or the travel has been back to back to back, when I've had to spend too much time away from my daughter, or I wasn't able to make some event and I just crack and I think, what are we doing all of this for? And I just want to throw my entire career away and find a way to just be with my children all the time. I mean, that's something that it doesn't happen all often, right? But every once in a while, I get to the point where I wonder what it's all for because at the end of the day, am I going to care how many keynotes I gave or how much revenue I generated or that nihilism with work? Does this give you that edge?
The edge that I get is I feel, and this goes back to my why with my family. I feel like God gave me this for a reason, and the reason is There's two reasons. One, I'm so happy it didn't happen to somebody else in my family because I feel like I can handle it. And it just, the second reason is it could have been so much worse. There's so many people, and I'm sure you walk into a room, everybody has something. And this challenge that I have is not as bad as what a lot of people have. Another lesson in this is it's not always the person that's suffering with something who has it bad. It's the person who's taking care of them. It's the loved one. It's the child. So we talked before about leadership in my team. I'm super compassionate towards people who have children and, they're freaking out. They got to run to the school to go get their kid. I totally understand now. Um,
Yeah.
and
You understood
it's,
less before?
yeah, yeah. It was just, I got to run my business and you're slowing us down by having to go get your child. And I was less compassionate. And the culture has totally changed in our team. And I think a lot of that goes to it shows by our turnover. We have very low turnover, and we do have a couple people who've left and come back and said, "I will never leave ever again because this is a family."
Not to make this a Joe Terry love fest, but I will never forget one day I was telling him about something I had to miss for my daughter, and he called me on the weekend, and I answered the phone. This was early in our relationship, and he just said, "Jessica, I never want you to miss something for your daughter because of work. It's not worth it. Don't do it." It was so different from all of the experiences I've had with all of my other leaders in the past. And it's not realistic because I'm a keynote speaker, you're a keynote speaker. These events get booked out a year in advance. And a year from now, I agree to a keynote that I don't realize later will end up being the day that my daughter has a concert or something. And I've signed the contract. I can't go. I can't not go. And yet, the fact that he gave me permission to say no means that when something comes up and I am able to prevent it, I can do it without fear. I can say, listen, I can't do it. And I don't have to explain myself. I don't have to justify, argue, defend, or explain why I'm making that decision. It's just, no, I can't do it. And that's the kind of leader that I will follow. I will follow that leader for a long time.
Yeah, and it's so ironic. I saw a quote this morning. Um, it said, "A person who feels appreciated will always do more than expected." And it just it just kind of I said, "This is so ironic. I'm coming on your show today, and I saw that this morning, and it gave me chills because it's true."
Yeah. Okay, so as I was thinking about what I wanted to ask you today, one of the things I would love to dig into is the pain cave because I don't get it. I get it intellectually. I get it intellectually that you're building a muscle of withstanding difficulties so that when things get tough, you got that practice or whatever. But I don't feel the compulsion to put myself in the pain cave, even though I understand it intellectually. And if anything, I'm trying to find the serenity cave. So, can you explain to me why the pain cave is better or worse than the serenity cave, or what the pain cave gives you that the serenity cave doesn't have? I just help someone who does not relate to that at all understand.
We can probably spend the whole show on the pain cave, and I'm trying to think of a good way of where it originated from. And for me, I think it's three things. I was the youngest of four kids. I had a love for basketball. My older brother was 6'8", an amazing basketball player. I went to the same high school as him, and we had a 12-year age gap. And I wanted to play Division One basketball, and I hope my coach listens to this one day. But he said, "You're not good enough to play Division One basketball." and we're gonna invite all the D3 schools to come in and look at you. And I was pissed. So that was one moment, and I did play Division 1 basketball, and I did become a captain of my team before I graduated.
So
So
there, Coach Mike or whatever your name was.
yeah, Coach Roach, and I will forward this to him. He fueled part of that fire to get into the pain cave. The second was I had a family business that I grew up in, and my dad was in the same exact business that he started in 1975. And I was feisty, a good salesman, and I would some days come in and say, you know what, I'm going to go start my own business. And he would say, you can never do it. It's just not possible. And it's 1999, 2000. You'll never be able to do it in this market. So that was the second thing that somebody challenged me. The third was Iron Man. Everyone looked at me like I was crazy. I was stuck in the CrossFit world, kept getting hurt, trying to challenge these young, strong guys. And I was killing myself. And my wife's like, why don't you just start swimming? So I tried swimming. I was like, this is so boring. And, then I got into the Ironman. And I did my first Ironman, and it was a complete epic fail with a friend of mine. I said, I'm hooked. So again, three things people told me I wasn't going to be able to do. So you get into the Ironman and the pain cave, and it's also like CrossFit. You have these studs you line up with, and they get out of the water and they're on the bike, and they are just gone and gone and gone. And you're just sitting there going, oh my God, I am so bad at this. And you learn to fuel, you learn to have an experience in races, and you deal with different weather and different courses and hills, and you just learn to be calm and have clarity and fuel. And then you see those guys laying on the side of the road because they didn't, and you walk through the pain cave and you come out the other side, and there's no more gratifying feeling than crossing an Ironman finish line. Um, so so the one I went with Joe was when I knew something was wrong. So um, that feeling of coming through the other side on the pain cave is great. I try and talk to my children about it. We were just running with my son, who's a soccer player, plays pretty high level soccer, and he had a little bit of a setback in the beginning. And I said, we can run 2 laps easy, or we can do 1 lap hard. What do you want to do? And he said, 2 laps easy. So we were running around this big field, and he's like, I can see he's sluggish, and he wants to quit. His shoulders are down. And I said, we're not tired. And he said, yes, we are. And I said, okay, well, we are tired, but we're not going to let the people next to us know that we're tired until we get in the car. So we're going to fake it, and we're going to fight through it. And in Ironman, when you're racing, if I'm passing Joe Terry and I'm dying, I know he's dying, I'm going to smile and say, hey, Joe, you're doing great. Pat him on the butt and just sprint by him as hard as I can. And the pain cave is just one of those places you have to go through to get through to the other side of these races. And I think Ironman is just a great way to show that skill, because everybody goes through it.
So let's break that down, because I think your reaction, let's start with Coach Roach and then your dad and then whoever it was that said you couldn't do the Ironman. That reaction of, oh, yeah, I'll show you, is not the way that everyone reacts to those moments. It's not how I reacted. When I had those moments with people saying you can't do it, I said, okay, I won't. I tried something else. And so it's unusual. No, not unusual, because I don't know what's usual, but it's not like me, right? We're totally different. It's one of the things I think Joe and I really like about working together and why we wrote the book together, because we wrote this book called Surrender to Lead. And Joe's path was just like yours. They were telling him he couldn't do it, he couldn't make it in his athletic career. And he's like, I'll show you. And meanwhile, I was being knocked down in my own way, and it knocked me down. And I went down hard. And then I had this bottom that emerged out of that moment, some willingness to grow, but it wasn't the same path, right? But we ended up at the same place. So what is it in you that takes those naysayers and turns that into fuel? How do you be the person that uses that as fuel instead of using that as, the thing that is the weapon that beats you down?
I just think testing those limits is so exciting. Um, and, I compare it to work, and I started a company, and I got to the point where we were doing really well in New York City, and no one's ever heard of Schaefer Enterprises. It's not a name that you hear in New York City about being a great insurance agency. So we would have to go up against Marsh, Aon, Lockton, and try and do things different and compete with the giants. Um, and part of the private equity space, I wasn't looking to sell my company, but I was trying to find a way to compete on a grander scale and see if they were going to bring more, tools to help me, you know, go boutique versus the giant phase. Um, and that was something that I really didn't know if I needed to do, I should do, or I had to do. So ultimately, we decided to do it because financially it was the right decision for many reasons. Um, but I look back now, and it was the right time and place, and it just fell in the timeline really well.
I'm curious about, the way we've been talking it up until this point is, you had this diagnosis, put things into perspective for you. You learned resilience. You're pushing through. You're using it as fuel. It's making you a better leader. But there must have been the initial reaction, which wasn't so positive, that didn't maybe initially have those life lessons. Was it hard when you first got the diagnosis? Was there grief and fear? And what was the first reaction, and how did that turn?
First, there was shock, denial, fear. But oddly enough, there was a huge amount of relief.
Mm,
I wasn't, I realized I wasn't losing my mind, that all these symptoms and events that took place for the 2 years prior to that, um, the fatigue, I tripped on a family vacation in Egypt over a chain that I saw perfectly. I knew it was there. Um, I had muscle stiffness in my right forearm that felt like I was a tennis player and I had tennis elbow. And I realized that what I had a name, and it was Parkinson's disease, specifically young onset Parkinson's disease. And I wasn't losing my mind because um, I spent a lot of time Googling, and it would just made you crazy. And I'm glad I didn't have a Chat GPT account at that point, because I probably would have lost my mind even more.
ChatGPT, we love you so much. Okay. And so then how did it turn? How did that, the relief, the fear turned to, well, was relief at the same time. Then what happened?
So then I spent 1 year trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to do what I love again? And is it over? And
Mm,
that's where the fear set in. And my wife, being a physician, wanted me to do a trial. And if you go on the main medications, which is the carbidopa levodopa, you are ineligible to do trials. So for one
Oh,
year, I kept progressing. I kept, pro- re- regressing, and getting worse and worse and worse. And I wanted to do a race to prove everybody that I was going to be fine. And I got to the point where I
there's
could,
that there's that personality again.
yeah, it's
I
that
gotta do a
trait.
race to prove myself.
Yeah. And I got to the point where I couldn't walk and I was driving my right foot. So we went
Oh,
to a
wow.
doctor and he looked at my wife and said, if you let me give him the medicine, he will have a great next 15 years of his life and I can make him feel 95% back to himself. So
Mm,
he convinced her. And, and within 2 weeks, I felt like I was, you know, I felt like I was 30 years old again. I was like, wow, I feel great. This is amazing. So it gave me a huge perspective that I can do this again. And when we complete a race, we all get together and we talk about our day. And some people were happier than others that they did well or didn't do well. And I stood up and I said, this was the worst finish I've ever had, the most gratifying day I've ever had. And I want you to all put it in perspective that finishing first or second really doesn't mean anything. I had raced this race probably 6 times. I didn't even know there was these beautiful mountains in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And I rode that bike and I said, wow, it's so beautiful out here because I just finally accepted the moment that I was so lucky to be able to just be out here. Um, so
it's
that's
beautiful.
yeah, yeah, that changed everything.
What is your legacy? What do you hope your legacy to be?
Speaking about ChatGPT,
Don't ask him.
so it's funny because I just recently heard that in 3 generations, no one will ever know your legacy. And I joked with my son and I said, I hope ChatGPT changes that because I want people to remember me more than 3 generations from now. And I said, I'm going to leave it up to you to keep refreshing ChatGPT and keep my name in the mix. So um, it really goes back to the why and having my kids have the grit to just fight through any adversity and to know that, you know, their dad was able to do it, that they're able to do it, and to pass that down from generation to generation. And it extends today into why I'm doing this. I want people to know who are suffering with this that it's possible. Um, and that I'm going to be there for them to help them get through that first year because that first year is so terrifying for anyone that's going through this.
Mm. You mentor people now? I mean, I saw that you do mentorship. Who do you mentor?
So it's it's the same way that it happened for me. There was a physician who was the profiled athlete for Ironman Kona 2 years ago. She is a anesthesiologist from the Cleveland Clinic. I'll leave her name out of it. And she finished the race in 14 hours. And I picked up the phone and I called her and I said, how the hell did you just do Ironman Kona, knowing the elements and how hard it was? And I said, what medicine are you on? And she told me, and I said to my wife, we're going to Cleveland Clinic. And I made an appointment and I did the executive health physical and I started researching the medications. So it took one full calendar year for me to go from being diagnosed, trying to get on trials, getting appointments at doctor's offices, and getting onto medication before I was able to do anything. So I get a lot of phone calls now from people that know me from the endurance world. And I just got one last week. And I tell people it's going to be okay. And I'm going to help you get through it. And these are the medications. And the frustrating part is people are from all around the country. Everyone has different financial means, everyone has different insurance. And um, there's better doctors in better geographical areas. So I just try and help them through the process and make them understand that it's going to take time and it's going to be okay.
Hmm. So if you could plant one seed in the minds of people listening to this podcast, leaders generally, what seed would you like to plant? What life lesson?
Stick with people
Mm,
and be adaptable, stick with people. Um there's moments that are really low for people, and I think from a team perspective it's it's huge because it comes back to pay dividends. Now, I say that as an entrepreneur. In today's world with private equity and venture capitalists, they might not be as patient and they might not know everybody individually, and they have a responsibility to a board. So I say that carefully, that I understand that's not always possible, but when you have a team that you work closely with, I've gone to bat for people who, I know should be protected, and we have to keep them on our team and try and find a way. But patience is a big factor for me.
yeah. Well, patience is hard for me. I'm very impatient. It's one of the many things that we don't have in common.
Yeah, yeah, and I didn't have it. I didn't have it 10 years ago. But again, going through something like this, you tend to look at things with a little bit of a different lens.
Yeah. How old are you?
I had just turned 50.
Wow. Okay. Well, happy birthday.
Thank you.
I have one last question. You're not off the hook yet. This is my favorite question. And it is, what is something that you don't get asked about very often that you wish you were asked more often?
Well, I hope after my company hears this, they don't ask me this question, but it's, how do you know when to quit?
Mm, and how do you?
You just don't. You just don't. You don't ever quit. They're gonna have to throw me out the door, um, and I try and teach that to my children. You just don't quit. You have to keep fighting, because if you do quit, then all of these all of these luxuries are gonna go away. So, um, Parkinson's, there's no cure. It's growing 100% a year, and there's one medicine, and it's exercise. There's nothing that can slow the progression. There's no cure. So I can't quit. I have to get up. There's no days off, and I need to just keep moving forward.
What a beautiful message. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you so much for your candor. I'm sure people are going to love this episode and love learning from you. And you're a keynote speaker, right? So, where can people go to learn more about you and hear more from you?
Well, I am a new keynote speaker, GregorySchaefer.com. And I
Will
am
you
looking
spell that?
Gregory, Schaefer, SCHAEFER.com. And
Okay.
I'm really excited. I have something coming up for 250 salespeople in another month, and I'm really looking forward to starting that chapter as well.
Wonderful. Well, I would love to have you speak at one of my events. It's such an inspiring message and just said so gracefully. So thank you so much for joining us, Greg. I'm so glad Joe connected us.
Thank you, and I appreciate you. And I'm almost done with all of your episodes, which is which is remarkable what you do. So thank you.
Well, they're going to just keep coming. I'm not quitting, so you'll have more to listen to as we keep publishing.
Keep them coming.
Thanks, Greg.
All
Bye.
right. Thanks, Jeff.